peace, only war.
What's up, guys? It's Mike from 40K Dirtbags, and I've got a GT next Saturday. I decided to put this little mini-series together explaining my process coming into 40K and how I've used competitive shooting and 2 decades in the Marine Corps to help me prepare for tournaments and just playing 40K in general. So the first thing you need to do is find the mission pack. Some tournaments will email this out to you. Most of the time you have to find it on your own. So this is the Fight Before Christmas GT up in Dixon City, Pennsylvania. So for me, my first thing is coming up with the game plan. And for that, I built this document to help me keep in mind what units are doing what, where I generally deploy, who goes in deep strike, who goes in rapid ingress, and then these are questions that I will ask myself essentially pre-game and then also throughout the game in general. So for me, playing Chaos Space Marines, as far as deployment, if I have to expose a unit, I will only expose one Nurgle unit, then I can use the Dark Obscuration stratagem. If my opponent has heavy indirect and they can hit any unit anywhere on the board at any time, something I've found to help mitigate that first and second volley of fire is to flood the board instead of like a null deployment. Again, review the primary objectives. Is it a hold 2? Is it a hold 1 and more? Again, having a plan for your secondaries, and that's where your list construction and solidifying the list you want to take to the event is going to come into play. I want to look out for turn 1 charges, whether I can get a turn 1 charge off or if my opponent can get a turn 1 charge off. Identifying lines of sight blocking positions, this can all be pre-planned as well. Identifying enemy gun ranges, and it's not just the range of the gun, it's going to be their movement plus the range of the gun. If they can advance and shoot, that range is going to be much further, and they're going to be able to get better angles on you. I'm going to determine my general direction of travel for where I want to send my main battle line units, and then some sort of like flanking or harassing unit. When I look at an opponent's army, I want to identify what I think their center of gravity is. So I'm going to ID what their high value targets are and determine priority. Just because an enemy unit might be the most powerful unit in that army doesn't necessarily mean you need to engage with it. An example of that might be Angron or Magnus the Red. If you have the ability to take one of those units out in one round, then that may be an option for you. Another option is to completely ignore that unit and kill everything else around it. I want to know about any sort of advance and charge, any sort of fire and fade, who can fight first, and then fall back, shoot, and charge. From there, I want to minimize my critical vulnerabilities. So splitting forces, to me, that is outrunning my security or outrunning my support by fire position. So that might be my Forge Fiends or my Obliterators. Definitely want to mitigate turn 1 charges. So again, Angron can absolutely be up in your face turn 1, and if you don't have an answer for it turn 2, then he's just going to wreak havoc. So I'm playing right now 1 Accursed Cultist brick, and typically they will be rapid ingress on a flank, but in the last game against World Eaters, I decided to deploy them on the line, screening out his movement so I can protect my Rhinos and my Forge Fiends. And then any sort of out-of-line of sight shooting. Again, I only want to expose 1 Nurgle unit. So my Cultists are also Nurgle, so I can get control of my backfield objective turn 1 and make it sticky. I'm going to play Death Guard tonight, and again, they have 3 Plague Burst Crawlers, and I'm going to have to definitely use the Nurgle strat on the Cultist turn 1. So I don't want to expose any other Nurgle units other than that 1 unit turn 1. My general concept of operations, again, I got this from Vanguard Tactics, so determining what is my non-negotiable objective, the objective that I'm going to hold the entire game, what is my push objective, so where am I going to move to first in the midfield, reinforce that, and then move to potentially the third objective if that mission requires me to hold 3 objectives, and then pick one objective that I'm just going to shoot anything that goes onto it from my opponent. Pre-game movement, I'm going to make sure my seekers aren't blocked with enemy infill or enemy scout. Screening is so important in 10th edition, so not only screening my force from any sort of turn 1 charges, but then making sure that I have 18 inches between 2 units so I can push out my opponent's rapid ingress options and, optimally push them into areas that I know they can drop in, and then I can come up with some sort of counterattack if they decide to rapid ingress. Max threat ranges, I already talked about that. So another example might be I'm playing one of my practice partners is running the double drop pod with the with grab devastators in them. So what I did was I pushed my screen out to where if that drop pod comes in, then my heavy hitting armor units are 24 inches away, 24.1 inches away from where that drop pod comes in, and then the grab dev guys get out. You need to know if they have deep strikes, whether it's 3 inches or 9 inches. So if it's Grey Knights or Inceptors. Any sort of in-game redeploy when they can pull units off the board, like Cast Space Marine Bikes or Scouts or the Clades Assassin, and then any extra movement that they can do outside of phase. So like aeldari, Fire and Fade. Not Fire and Fade, you know what I'm saying. It's the aeldari crazy thing. I break rehearsals down into 2 parts, mental rehearsals and practice. So whenever I build a new list, I will redo this document, and this document is something that I will read throughout the week, in addition to reading over core rules just to make sure that I understand not only how to play the game, but also explain what I'm doing to my opponent if it's some sort of weird kind of non-standard type of play. For an example of that would be the slingshot charge. So that was really big at 9th edition. In 10th edition, it's still possible, but you have to finagle it a little bit differently. Definitely reading over your Army core rules, you should be able to nearly verbatim explain every part of your Army's capabilities, as well as like how it works and how you plan on using it. And then, of course, reviewing your data sheet. So if I'm taking a shit and I've got, 5-10 minutes or so throughout the day, I'm going to be reading, either the core rules, Army rules, my data sheets, or this document here. As far as practice, like any sport, whether it's competitive shooting, jiu-jitsu, 40K, it doesn't matter. Music, anything, you need to find a coach or find someone who is better than you. You can either pay for this or just, again, within your local meta, find who the best players are and just make friends with them. Also, find good practice partners. It's not good to only play people better than you. You need to have a spread between people that are better than you, your peer group, people that are at your level, and then also people that are at your level and below you. Typically, you're going to get beaten by people that are better than you. People that are at your level or your peer group, that's going to be around, the 50-50 mark. And you shouldn't feel bad about playing people that aren't as good as you. Obviously, help them where they need help, but you also need to gain the confidence in winning and how to win. If you struggle with time, or your army has a lot of units, or like a Accursed Cultist is a great one. So when Derek started playing, the triple Accursed Cultist, just the sequencing of not only moving all the models, but then all the attacks, and then also all of their saves and their feel no pains. And they have, models that have 3 wounds, models that have 1 wound. So again, so you're not wasting your opponent's time or your own time. Use a clock to help, make sure that you aren't, hogging the time. I would recommend for, tournament play to use a clock, because the last thing you want to do is trying to be like a nice guy and you don't play a clock, and then your opponent is just eating up all of your time, and then all of a sudden you realize the round's almost over and you're like, at round 3. And also, like, your army might be a late scoring army. So, it's entirely possible to come back like 30 points in the late game, within this edition. So making sure that you equally have your hour and a half or hour 20 is really important. You don't need to play all 5 turns. If I'm, depending on what I feel like I need to focus on, I might tell my opponent, hey, like, can we just focus on turn 1, turn 2, or maybe turns, 1 through 3, do a re-rack, and then do it again. Or, if I get to go first, we play to a certain point, and then, we re-rack, and then, my opponent goes first. So you get to, stress test, your list. And then also, scoring primary is different between going first or going second. I think keeping statistics is important. I think the Tabletop Battles app is really good at, letting you know what your average victory points are. So, for an example, right now, I'm at like a 58% win rate, but only scoring an average of like 81 points a game. So my goal for the next, 3 months or so might be, hey, like, how can I bump that up to an average of 85 points? And then looking at each game and seeing, where am I losing points? Is it the primary? Is it the secondaries? Or is it some sort of a combination of that? A couple of principles that I try to adhere to while playing this game is the 1/3, 2/3 rule, and that's mainly from like the military or my time in the Marine Corps. And what that means is I will spend 1/3 of my time planning and then 2/3 of my time either in execution. Right. So if round 1, round 2 may be the longest turns. Based off of not only your play style, but just kind of like what is the board state. If your opponent is a little bit cagier, then rounds 2 and 3 are going to be the longer turns, because that's when there's lots of shooting, multiple combats, and stuff like that. But again, this is where playing with a clock is convenient, because spend about 5 minutes planning your turn, and then the rest of your time that you've dedicated to that round is to moving models, rolling dice, and doing the things. Stick to the mission. So when you I think everyone has felt that mental block of like, dude, I don't even know what to do right now. Like, refocus, stick to the mission. What is the primaries and what are my secondaries, whether you're taking fixed or tactical. Keep it simple. I think, while there are times for ingenuitive play within 40K, if you're, at a big tournament, you're under a clock, I kind of think about it like a multiple choice test, where your first answer is usually the right answer, and to avoid second guessing yourself. So, I have a couple examples of what I try to do to keep it simple, because we love 40K. You can talk about 40K for hours. You can play a 3-hour game and then still talk about it for like the next few days. What happened within that game. Of course, have fun, right? I've found there's times in every sport every sport that I've become obsessed with, like sometimes it can lose its fun, right? So, I might be at a match, shooting, a competitive pistol, or I'm at, jiu-jitsu, or even 40K, and, I'm just not having fun. So, you need to just reframe yourself and make sure that you're still enjoying the experience. And then, of course, at the bottom, where am I? What am I doing? Whenever I feel that I don't have an answer immediately for whatever problem set is put in front of me, these are the two questions I'm going to ask myself to refocus my mindset. So one of the guys in the Discord mentioned that one of the games that he played, he didn't feel like he had any line of sight. And I was working on a project for something else. And again, in the Discord, like if I have time, of course, like, you know, we're going to answer questions and stuff. So I was working on PowerPoint anyway, and I just quickly made this. And I was like, dude, you have tons of line of sight. So this is essentially everywhere. If you are, you know, deployed here, turn 1, turn 2 between movement, you know, deployment placement, and then also some sort of strat reserves or rapid ingress. This is all your lines of sight for a 36-inch gun that has, you know, about either 6-inch off a board edge or an 8-inch movement. This is everything that you have. So I think it's important to know the maps that you're playing on and to have a laser. My sons got me into this game, and playing with 9 to 13-year-olds, you know, I saw the laser lock. They're like $10, and that will show you exactly the lines of sight between these hard angles. And then again, like I said, between movement and the gun, that allows you to get the angles. And then, you know, advance and movement, deep strike, strat reserves, that is going to increase the angles as well. So again, for this ITC map, which is big in the UK, there's plenty of lines of sight to at least, you know, threaten an entire flank or threaten an entire avenue. This is something that I built. I started doing this last year before LVO, so I have this on PowerPoint. If you want it, DM me on Discord. So I built this for every single mission with every single map option, and this currently is set for the GW terrain, and then I'll have my unit icons here, and then this will allow me to think about where I want to deploy my units on every single map. So, you know, getting ready for the GT on Saturday, you know, I looked at the mission pack. I saw all 5 missions, so I pulled, you know, I essentially have 15 versions of this with every single terrain layout, and then where I would want to deploy based off of that. I don't want to think about where I need to deploy while I'm, you know, at the tournament. I want to have as many things pre-planned before going there, so I can essentially hit the play button when I need to hit the play button mentally, and then I'm only making in-game tactical decisions. This stuff, I decided to screenshot the whole thing. So this over here is for player place terrain. So the last 2 years I've been at LVO, it's player placed. So, and they use, you know, FLG terrain. So it's generally about these 5 to 6 pieces. Maybe you have double containers, or maybe 2 of these. Maybe 2 of these or whatever. But again, like in the mission pack, it'll tell you what the terrain pieces are, and then I will set that out how I optimally want to deploy that, whether I want a open gun line, or if I want more terrain pieces for my infantry and rhinos to kind of move from terrain piece to terrain piece as they maneuver around the board. This is an example of one that I made for episode 2, playing my son. Over here, this is just an example of keeping it simple. So again, you know, deployment was set, you know, before the game even started. I knew where I wanted to deploy my guys. You know, Seekers are going to come up here and move block. My heavy chosen squad is going to come up here, you know, clear this out, make a J turn up to here. My intent was to have my opponent kind of swivel in this direction, because these are the 3 objectives that I wanted to control the whole game. This rhino over here, filled with 2x5 man units, is kind of like my utility rhino. So he, you know, his job is to scream up here, and then, you know, just kind of deal with anything up on this side. It's more of like a harassing type of unit. And then again, like deploying within 15 inches of a board edge allows you, if you get investigate signals turn 1, you can easily get 4 points from that. As far as like, you know, again, like creating kill zones, and again, just keeping it simple, right? So again, this is a turn 2 kind of freeze frame of episode 2, and again, he had a unit here. My secondaries were to, it was a tempting target, and he chose this one to be my tempting target, and then I needed to kill units off an objective. So I was able to do that here and here, and then having the redundancy built in case this doesn't go down, which it didn't go down with my intended unit, but I had this unit over here to finish off the rest of this squad. Cool. So that is episode 1. What are your thoughts? Let me know what you do to prepare for tournament play, and I'll see you guys in episode 2. Later.
There is only war.